Senator Elizabeth Warren, the Democrat from Massachusetts and member of the Armed Services and Finance Committees. Senator Warren, thank you so much for being here tonight. What a strange chapter of American history we find ourselves living through. First, let me just ask you about the outreach that Pete Hegseth is doing on the Hill and elsewhere. He seems very focused on women. His mother seems very focused on female senators. Do you think any of it's working?
So let's look at his problems with women. We've seen the allegations of rape, the allegations of sexual assault, but there's also the question of what he has said about women serving in the military. Remember, he's been nominated to be the Secretary of Defense, which means the person over all of our military. 18% of active duty military right now are women. And without those women, we don't meet our recruiting targets. We don't have the ability to field an Army, a Navy, an Air Force, Marines. And what has he said? Those women should not be allowed. No women should be allowed to be in combat. And that's like saying, you know, here we are, we're going to run the military, and for men, it is a great deal. Come on in, do every job we've got here. Tell us what you like. We'll get you in there. We'll let you climb that ladder. We'll let you do whatever you want. Women, not really. You're going to be confined just to a different set of jobs and have no chance of ever meeting any of the top positions in the military because you won't have any combat experience. That is a problem. It's a problem for our military and ultimately for our national defense. Because if we can't have the talents of those tens of thousands of women who right now sign up and join the military voluntarily, we're going to lose them, and we're going to lose the next generation and the next generation, wave after wave. And that is a problem for our entire national defense. You can't have a Secretary of Defense that starts out saying to nearly 1/5 of the active duty military, you're not really welcome here as a full member. Good luck to you, but go somewhere else.
I believe, in the control room will correct me, Senator, that today Mr. Hegseth sort of reiterated his support for the work that women have done in the military, and that he believes they are, I'm paraphrasing here, strong fighters, but did not, to your point, go out and say, as Secretary of Defense, he would ensure they continue to have combat roles. I guess I wonder, I think what you're talking about is very significant. It's something that's been less covered in all of the controversies around Pete Hegseth. Do you see any through line between the allegations surrounding his behavior towards women and his treatment of women and his attitudes towards women in the fighting services?
So I think those two are very closely linked, and I'm glad you drew that connection. Because, again, I want to go back to all of the women we have in the military. We also have a problem right now, and have had for a long time in the military, with sexual assault, with sexual harassment in the military. 29,000 women filed active complaints last year for sexual assault in the military. And look, everyone who studies this understands that is a way underreport of what's actually happening, because many women understand in the military, if you come forward and file that complaint, you can just kiss your career goodbye. And that many, many leaders have been far too protective of men and making sure that there aren't complaints against them that make it into their file. So we already have a problem. And it's a problem for recruiting women into the military. It is a problem for retaining women in the military. And now Donald Trump has nominated someone who has a long history and whose own mother has called him out as a harasser of women. And the problem with that is he can say, oh, I didn't do that one, and I didn't do that specific one, and now I got my mom to stand up and vouch for me. But the reality is, what woman says, I want to dedicate my career to defending my country as part of active duty military when I know that the guy at the top who's going to set the tone for the entire military is somebody who himself is credibly accused of having been one of those guys on the front line who was one of the ones who was after women over and over and over, including in the workplace. And he's the guy who's supposed to be in charge and make this a military that is open to both men and the women we need in service. That's not going to work. And I say this by way of saying, whatever else you want to say about him, this is a problem for our national defense, and that means he is not unqualified to be the Secretary of Defense. He is disqualified to be the Secretary of Defense.
Do you think that line of argument and that reasoning and all this information that's coming out is resonating with the senators on the Hill that could very well decide his nomination? I mean, I'm thinking in particular of Joni Ernst, who he met with today, who's a woman, who's a senator, and said, I appreciate Pete Hegseth's service to our country, something we both share. Today, as part of the confirmation process, we had a frank and thorough conversation. Frank and thorough. Do you have a sense of where this is going on the Hill?
Look, I don't want to speak for any other senator, but I will say this. On the Senate Armed Services Committee, we have two women who have been in combat, Tammy Duckworth and Joni Ernst. We have a lot of men and women on both the Republican and Democratic side who work hard to try to make sure that this is a military that can actively recruit the best and the brightest men and women. I am the chair of the subcommittee on personnel. My ranking member, Senator Scott from Florida, a Republican, both of us hear the complaints, get the complaints, and work to try to make sure that our military is responsive. And the reason for that, I just keep trying to stress this, we're not meeting our recruiting targets. Being in the military is tough. It is a tough job. And making that your career is a really hard decision. To say to effectively 1 out of every 5 people who feels that in their heart and that that's what they want to do, you're not welcome. To be a full participant just because you're a woman cuts them off from active duty military service. And that undermines our national security. That has got to be a concern to every single member of the Armed Services Committee. We are the ones who will hold the hearings on Hegseth and ultimately do the first round of voting.
There's a lot of concern about the future of the U.S. military, and including a concern shared by you and your colleague, Richard Blumenthal, about how and whether the president-elect may try and weaponize the U.S. military or direct it against U.S. citizens. And I know out of that concern, you have urged President Biden and the Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin to issue a policy directive that prohibits the mobilization of active duty military or federalizing National Guard personnel to be deployed against their fellow Americans unless specifically authorized. The criticism here is that Trump could rip it up once he's president, but certainly he'd have to explain himself in doing so, and that in and of itself is something. Have you gotten a response from the president? Have you heard from the Secretary of Defense? Do you have any sense of whether this is of interest to them?
So we're still in talks. Let's just leave it there for right now. But you put your finger on it exactly. Right now, there's no prohibition. And that means the next president has very few curbs in this area other than law generally. And so what we want to do is get something very specific in place so that if he wants to make a move, Donald Trump is going to have to do it out in public in front of the whole country and explain himself for doing that. And sure, maybe he will do that, but it's not nothing to put curbs in place and force him to actually, if he wants to do something, to have to step up and explain why he is ripping those curbs up. So that's what we're pushing the President of the United States and the Secretary of Defense to do right now. And we've got a lot of support for that in the Senate. We don't need to vote on it. It's not a legislative matter. It's a matter of trying to get the administration to move right now to make it very clear there are curbs on the president using the military or using any part of our defense industry against citizens of the United States.
Wow. I mean, we're in the zone of preemptive pardons against people who have not committed crimes and trying to curb the president from turning the military against American citizens. That is where we are at right now. These are the guardrails that people like yourself are trying to establish in the waning hours of President Biden's administration. Senator Elizabeth Warren, thank you so much for helping us understand the moment. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you.